is going by the SBA port. And you can see here the SDU new building, and we call it a green building. So SDU is working hard for the sustainability, and we are looking for to work all the 17 sustainable goals which has been set by United Nations. So here is a brief outline of today's presentation. First, I will give you an overview on the global fisheries sector, some data, recent data given by FAO. And then I will talk about something on fisheries co-management. What are the rule and principle, how it could be set, what are the activities in co-management. And then we will give a comparative analysis based on our recent research between Cambodia, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. We have already published, already submit the article for publication in Marine Science Journal. I will bring some of the result and share with you. And then I will talk about the challenges in CBFM, that means community-based fisheries management in Asian countries. That means especially in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And after that, recommendation and conclusion. And as I said that we did this research in Cambodia and Vietnam, yet there are some important information might be missing. There might be some wrong information. If you notice that, please let me know so that it will be helpful for us to correct our paper. Why the fisheries sector is important? Of course, fisheries is very old profession of mankind, right? Especially in developing country, you can see that even in your country, even in our country, even in Europe, a lot of people, millions of people are involved in this sector for livelihood and then for employment generation as well. About 60 million people all over the world are involved in, primarily involved in global fisheries sector, and 85% of them are in Asia. So in Asian country, in Asia, especially in Asia, fisheries is very, very important. And if you consider the whole global fisheries, 90% of them are based on small scale fisheries sector, and most of them are in developing countries. Why small scale fisheries are important for us? Of course, it supports our livelihood, millions of fishers' livelihood. It generates an employment, especially low skill employment. It provides nutrition. At the same time, it also gives our social welfare and social stability, and especially the women empowerment. Millions of women are involved in small scale fisheries sector. It is not only in South Asia, but also in African country, South American country as well. You can see that 97% are located in developing countries, as we mentioned that SSF are located in developing countries. 90 to 95% of SSF catch directly consumed by locally. Whatever, that's especially the small species, they specially consumed directly by the locally, the fishermen, and the rest of the things they sell to the market. So it provides nutrition to the people who live in the low tier of the society, because in our country, fishermen are mostly poor and they are suffer from the right food, right nutrient, and small scale fisheries can provide them good nutrient. 90% of full-time and part-time fishers are involved in small scale sectors. You know that in Asian country, there are full-time fishermen, but many of them are part-time fishermen, especially in lean period when they cannot fish, they go for other type of activities like farming, like small business, or also they work in a daily laborer, or they also work in a different service sectors as well. It is important to remember that SSF or small scale fisheries provide job for 90% of 50% of our women. And it is less destructive for our nature when we are harvesting in, or when we go culture for small scale fisheries, because these are 10 times less destructive than the commercial fisheries. If you consider the percentage of global fish catch in major river basin, you can see here that Mekong River is the world first or in the top in the list who produce major river basin catch, and it is about 15% of global catch, including lesser. And you know that lesser is situated in Cambodia. It is one of the greatest natural resource, not only for Cambodia, also for the world. Then after Nile, then after Irrigation in Myanmar, and Yangtze and Brahmaputra River, it also produced 5%. So you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the big river basin are in Asia, and 3 of Asia and Southeast Asia and South Asia as well. So they contribute a lot to the global catch in major river basin fisheries. Who are the top 5 inland water capture producers in the world? Of course, China is the top one. And then you can see India. Every year, the production is increasing. China is decreasing a little bit since 2017 and 2018. If you consider Bangladesh, it is increasing steadily. Myanmar, of course, is increasing, and Cambodia. So so you can see that Cambodia, Myanmar, and Bangladesh and India, these are the top 5 of inland capture fisheries. Of course, China is there, and in these 3 countries, capture fisheries production is increasing. If you consider about the percentage-wise of capture fisheries, where is our situation? Especially in our partners for WANAC, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand, I can give some data. Bangladesh, of course, it is 10%. They produce global inland fisheries. Cambodia, quite a lot, 4%, Vietnam, 1%, and Thailand, 2%. So you can see that the role of South and Southeast Asia in global fisheries, especially in capture fisheries, is very, very unique and very, very important. Yeah. There is another data. You can see that though the capture fisheries in increase in our areas, but at the same time, the catch is decreased due to different reasons, destruction of environment and habitat, and nowadays aquaculture production is increasing and increasing. So in future, the major production or major role of global fisheries will be aquaculture. World employment for fisheries and fish farmers by region. If you can see that in Asian country, it increasing every year. In 2018, it is about 100,000 people are involved in fish and fisheries farm, and it's increasing every day. In Europe, it's decreasing a little bit. In Africa, it also increasing. What about the women employment in fisheries sector in aquaculture? You can see from this graph that it is gradually increasing. So women participation in fisheries sector are increasing every year. Men are predominantly involved in fishing, but while women are essentially involved in all supply chain activities, like they help the women, post-harvest handling, selling of fresh fish, processing, storage, packaging, and marketing. In all stages, you can find that there is a significant participation from our women. Production trend and the relative contribution to global catch. You can see that in increased catch, China, India, and Cambodia, there is a trend that catch is increasing. But this increased catch doesn't mean that there is a sustainable fisheries. Maybe there is a fishing harvest effort is much than the stock, and that might be after a couple of years, the open water fisheries might be declined. But still today, there is increasing trends in catch in China, India, and Cambodia, and other countries. Decreasing catch trends, we can find it Brazil and Thailand. You can see that 27% already decreased. There is a decreasing trends. Vietnam, these two countries, in our partner of Wanasi, we can see that they have a decreasing trend in catch. Stable catch, Tanzania, Congo, Finland, Argentina, Nepal, no clear trends. In Bangladesh, we could not find any clear trends. Maybe there is a lack of real data, that's the reason. And exclude from analysis, Myanmar is excluded from this analysis due to lack of data from the government, I believe, Uganda and Ghana. So you can see that some of our partners of Wanasi, they have an increased trends, especially in Cambodia, but many of them, they have a decreasing trends in fish catch. So we need to be worried about that, how we can sustain, how we can manage our valuable natural resources, that is fisheries. Utilization of wild fish and aquaculture production. You can see that most of the fish is consumed by live, fresh or chilled. Frozen, then the frozen, and this consumption from frozen fish is increasing every year. You can see that, and that is the export industry. So a lot of fish from South and Southeast Asia, they export to Europe, America, and China, and most of the export is in a frozen condition. Prepared and preserved is a very little, and then cured, you can see that this line is very, very clear. So most of the fish we consume live, fresh, or chilled, or frozen. I will skip that. So here the slide shows that where there is a higher per capita fish consumption, and you can see that South and Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Bangladesh, this region and China, of course, this region we consume a lot of fish. We have a lot of water bodies, we have a lot of production. At the same time, we love fish, we eat fish, and fish is our staple food, and fish is the major source of our nutrient. So this is important as well. Yeah, this slide shows that the capture and aquaculture consumption, and you can see that every year consumption. So recently in 2018, we can see that aquaculture is greater than the capture fisheries in terms of human consumptions, because the supply from capture fisheries is declining globally. Here there is an overview of the major exporter and importer of fish and fish-related products. China is the major exporter, 14% of global export come from China. Vietnam, quite a lot, 5%. India, 4%. Thailand, also a big, we can see that 4%. Cambodia, 3%. Chile, 4%. So Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, they have a major role in export fish and fish-related products globally. And in terms of import, you can see that China 9%. So China at the one side they export fish, at the another side they import fish for the local consumption, and it's a huge 9% of global imports done by China. And most of other importers are developed country, United States 14%, Japan 9%, France 4%, Sweden 3%, Netherlands 3%, and Spain 5%. Yeah. I'll just skip these slides. So this is the map. Here is Bangladesh, Myanmar. We can see big Thailand in between, Cambodia and Vietnam. And as I mentioned earlier, today I will compare 3 cases, one from Vietnam, another from Cambodia, and then these 2 cases will be compared to Bangladesh one. Before a community-based fisheries management concept, I would like to talk about something about the sustainable development. Sustainable development is, this word is very much famous all over the world now. and you already hear about that, but still I would like to remind something about that so that it will be helpful after following my presentation afterward. So the development, which can cover three components, that is the social component, economic component, and environmental component equally, that development is called sustainable development. Or in other words, sustainable development is the development where the present generation can be benefited without with the consideration about the benefit of our future generation. Whatever the resource we consume, we need to consume rationally so that our future generation should not be deprived. So normally, most of the time in developed country, and even in a developing country, we consider social and economic aspects. Of course, if we consider both two aspects, then it is not sustainable development. We call it equitable development. In many countries nowadays, we consider the social development and also too much environmental stability as well. Then we call is bearable. But when we consider the social, environment, and economic aspect all together, then we call the development is sustainable. So in case of sustainable development, we need to focus on environmental aspect as well. And small-scale fisheries and community-based fisheries management, it can consider all of these three aspects of sustainable development. So that's why we claim that community-based fisheries management can give us sustainable development. What are the challenges in artisanal fisheries management, especially in Asian countries? And that could be all over the world, all developing countries. There are multiple stakeholders and they have a conflicting interest. And most of the time it is challenging to minimize that conflict. So that's why community-based fisheries management are there, small-scale fisheries are there, but it is not sustainable. Diverse and conflicting interest, different partners, different stakeholders, they have a different interest. NGOs and local communities, they want to preserve the fisheries, but the government want to employment generation, and some of the fishermen, they want to harvest as much as possible. So you can see that different groups and different conflicting situation, and that can create pressure on sustainability of small-scale fisheries. Democratization and decentralization. Most of the developing country, we run fisheries management in a centralized manner, top-down process. And this top-down approach is not suitable for sustainable management of small-scale fisheries. Economic growth, we have a pressure on economic growth, and then due to economic growth, we destroy a lot of habitat, especially in inland water. We build roads, we build houses, we build special economic zone, and that already shrinked a lot of water bodies. And if there is a less water bodies, pollution in the water bodies, in the river and canals, that means that there is a less fisheries as well. Issues of livelihood and political issues. Of course, in every country, we have a rules and regulation. But if the political leader or government, they don't want to implement these rules and regulation properly, then it will not work. And that is one of the big challenges in fisheries management in developing countries, including South and South Asian countries. Then there is a concept of co-management. Why co-management important? Co-management is a special type of management where the fishermen directly involved in management. It is fishermen's, local fishermen, the resource belongs to them, and they have to directly involved in co-management, in fisheries management. Of course, government can help them, NGOs can help them, they can promote them, but management capacities belongs to them, the right belongs to them. And this type of fisheries management is called community-based fisheries management. And when we can involve the local fishery in management, that means that we can empower them. They can feel that it is our resources, and then they are eager to manage these resources in a sustainable way. So that's why community-based management is a successful case in many countries of the world. But this is one type of cooperative management, right? And this cooperative management, I think the essence is built on the cooperative movement in Europe, especially in late 1980s. In Europe started cooperative management, especially in dairy sector, as for example, in agricultural sector. In this case, England is pioneer and Denmark is also after that one. Then might be Denmark is the second country who introduced in cooperative principles in managing dairy and farming. And these cooperative principles helps to develop the principles of community-based fisheries management. As we mentioned, that local community involved in SSF co-management are organized in very different ways, and it depends on different countries and different region. There are many types of community organizations, such as producer organization, like in aquaculture. There is a marketing association. There is a purchasing association. There could be different way the community association can be organized. Yes. So community-based management, I explained a little bit. There are several other management as well, like we called a new ecosystem-based management. So in this management, we enforce the ecosystem and we also capture the essence of ecosystem-based service, and then we manage the fisheries. Integrated coastal zone management. So it is an integration between community and governmental organization. Adaptive management, right-based management, like in Europe, the fisheries is basically based on right-based management. They have a license, they have a quota, and they have an access right. And then nowadays, we also talk about the marine protected areas. That is one type of management as well. And in this figure, you can see that here is the floodplain, here is the water body, and then floodplain and water body is connected with a big river like Mekong River and a lot of canals as well. Still today in developing country, we consider a micro level of management. That means that region-based or country-based. But if we need a sustainable management, then we need to think about the total catchment aspect. That means that total river basin aspect. And that is a holistic approach, that is a macro level. So if you can manage in a macro level, like in a Mekong, maybe 4 different countries or 5 countries, they can manage their fisheries, especially the regional one jointly, that will give a more sustainability. Then it managed by individual country and individual region inside the country as well. But it is not easy. It is very challenging task. There are 7 basic principles of community-based fisheries management. First principle is open and voluntary membership. So the fishermen, the local people who live near the resources, they have a right. They can easily join in this community organization, and whenever they want, they have a right to leave the organization. So that should be the principle number 1. Democratic management principle. Of course, the community people, they form their community, they form their organization, but the way they run this organization, that should be democratic. That should be the election process. By this election, they can select their member of organizing committee who can organize the fisheries on behalf of the members. Economic participation principle, that means that everyone should pay fees. Everyone should economically participate equally, and they will be benefited equally as well, every members. Autonomy and independent principles, that means that government should give autonomy of this organization so that they can run their organization by themselves. Of course, NGOs and governmental officials, they can support them to develop their skill how to run these community fisheries. and at some point they will withdraw their support, and we believe that after that community can run their resource by themselves. Another principle is that education, training, and education and training principles. So community should organize special training, fisheries management training, as for example, innovative catch management training, marketing training, or supply chain management training. That type of training should be provided by community organization, and they have to organize. And there should be they have to establish a communication channel where they can share their information within the community-based fisheries management and across the different community-based fisheries association as well. Cooperative among cooperative principles. So that means that the community, like in Cambodia, in one region, there are 10 communities or 15 fisheries communities, as for example. They should share the information. They should share their knowledge among different communities. They should not be act like a competitors. If they can share their knowledge, if they can work closely, that means that that will give a sustainability in macro level. So here is a overview again, community-based fisheries management. Now, many countries, the centralized government principle, from centralized government in a community-based fisheries management, we move to community self-management. As I mentioned that with collaboration with the government, community-led leaders, maybe the villagers, village leaders, different type of stakeholders, NGOs, local organizations, local influential persons, and they will boost, they will help the community organization. The best co-management agreement for each location depends on the capacities of the different local stakeholders. The success of the community-based fisheries management is largely depend on the managing capacities of different local stakeholders. That is important. So that's why the training is very much important, and support from the NGOs and government is important to develop their managerial skills. Now come to the next point. Where should co-management be used? Where we can be used successfully? Co-management may be easiest to develop where it's legally recognized both government and the local people. Government should first recognize that co-management is important, and they have to give this right to the local people, to the local fisher. Then it will be successful. Of course, that means that government is willing to do something. Ownership rights, there should be ownership rights. That means that the fishermen, they can organize by themselves. Local fishermen has an access right directly to be a part of the community. And if it is recognized by the rules, governmental rules, national governmental rules, then it establishes the ownership right, and then it's easy to manage or to establish a community-based fisheries management organization. Physical boundaries is also important. It is easier to a single village boundary than the multiple village boundary, where the fisheries can move or where the fish can move to different villages. It's like, as for example, Lesap is a huge area, and in this huge area there are several villages are there, and then it is very challenging sometimes to manage community-based fisheries management by a single village, by a single region. Then centralized system is important. Local people agree that there are problems with their fishery resources. What does it mean? That where the people, the local people realize that fisheries is declining, it is our main resources, it is a source of our protein, it is source of our livelihood. We need to manage this. If they feel by themselves, then it's easier to manage co-management. Strong interest, they have to show strong interest in the management, then it is important. And then the local community leaders, village chiefs, they have to be involved. In some areas or in many areas, there is a conflicting situation because village chief and influential person, they are not involved in community organization, and then they become a barrier. So it is also important to involve them in the committee so that they can be assist to run these organizations. And it also depends on local culture, uh, idols, and religion as well. Sometimes religion can also affect. So here you can see that these small areas, so it's a small village areas here. So if the fisheries is located in a small village areas, then it's easy and it is village level management. But if you consider the large areas like LESEP, if you consider this is a LESEP or this is a big floodplain, then the village level management cannot do sustainable fisheries, small scale fisheries management. Then we need a intermediate management level where the regional level, so where the committee should be formed at regional level, involvement of different village management as well, and then they can run it together. And if you want to achieve the catchment approach, whole river and whole floodplain, then we need an international community-based organization. Under this, there are regional community-based organization, and the regional under the regional there should be the village level. And then these three tiers can be coordinated together, share their information, and then they have to set the rules and regulation for community-based fisheries management. Then we can find a sustainable management based on the catchment area. Yeah, I'll just skip this. So national management, national government, and then we have catchment management. In catchment management, you can see that in every tiers, we need to involve the NGOs because they can organize the community. And then we can go for fisheries unit management. And then in fisheries unit management, you can see that community stakeholder involved and NGOs involved, and it can loop like this. Due to time shortage, I cannot explain it more. You can read the slides which is already uploaded in the system. So for a successful community-based management, first we need to establish the management objective. What we want to manage, what type of fisheries we want to manage, and then we need to ensure the international responsibilities are taken into account. Of course, in a big catchment, we need some international cooperation as well, regional cooperation as well. We need to ensure environmental protection view as well. As I said that for the sustainable development, we need to consider the environment, we need to consider so that the fisheries resource should not be declined. We need to maintain the stock at a certain level all the time. And that principle should be embedded into the laws and bylaws of community organization. Every year, every time, we need to assess the fisheries, and based on that, we will determine the catch. But mostly in developing country, there is no fisheries assessment, proper fisheries stock assessment. Provide technical guidance to community, as I mentioned several times. We also need to some conduct research as well. What are the challenges to management this? How we can overcome this? So that's why the universities and research organizations should be also involved in community management for the sustainable management issues. Provide catchment management perspective. As I mentioned that nowadays we only consider at village level or little bit at region level, but that cannot provide a sustainable development of small scale fisheries. We need whole catchment approach, and we need multinational approach as well, like for the multinational river. Provide funding. Small scale fisheries, they need funding, so government and NGOs, they can provide fund. Set rules for fishing activities. They need to provide some rules when and how the fisheries can be fish can be cast, when not. There are several other rules, and you need to enforce the agreed rules properly. And for the success, the community has to establish some system so that they continuously monitor the resource. Now come to small scale fisheries and community-based fisheries organization in 3 different countries. First, we start with Cambodia, the governance system and management in fisheries. In Cambodia, fisheries is managed in different ways. They have a licensing system, output input control, and fishing ban as well. They have a fisheries administration in a central level, regional cantonment as well, and control of surveillance. And control of surveillance belongs to the administration, fisheries administrations. Who are the network here? Network structure, of course, government fisheries officers, NGOs. There are several fishing and aquaculture companies in Cambodia. Cambodia has started application of community-based fisheries management, and it is going to be a successful. Some areas it is very successful, some areas it is challenging. And fishermen, aquaculture, and their families are involved here. And main regulation, so it is based on the fisheries reform from 2000 to 2012, when the Cambodian government reformed the fisheries. And after that, by this reform, they said that they want to give the right, access right to the fishermen. So it based on this reform. Vietnam, they have also more or less same governance system like Cambodia. Network structures is more or less same in all countries, even in Bangladesh, and even in, so NGOs, governmental officials, community organization is very recent case in Vietnam, especially, if I'm correct, because the new laws of fisheries for 2017, it gives some access to established of co-management system to empower the local communities. They also grant them with rights and improve resource protection. In case of Bangladesh, community-based fisheries management, it has been practicing for 30 to 40 years. So first is started as a pilot project under CBFM, Worldfish. I think they started this in 1992. But in 1998, the government introduced a new fisheries management policy. And then they said that the right has to go to the real fishermen. But still, it is not clearly defined, the community-based fisheries management, not special rules for community-based fisheries management. Like in Cambodia, they have a special rules for and laws and bylaws for community-based fisheries management. Now we like to analyze the principle. As I mentioned that there are several principles, how it apply in different countries. Community-based fisheries management in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. Open and voluntary membership. We can see that there is a partially applied this in Cambodia, in Bangladesh, also in Vietnam. That is the challenge. That means that some of the local fishers are not allowed. They have no free access to the resources. And if they don't have access, then they will be not involved in management, and they will not involved in community-based fisheries management, and then they will behave opportunistically. So that means that at some time they can catch fish, they have a conflicting resource and conflicting interest. So still we need a lot of work so that there should be a free and open access. Democratic management, yes. In all of these three countries, we can feel that they have a democratic management system. Economic participation principles in Cambodia, yes, the founding Congress, the founding Fisheries Committee, chairman and vice chairman. In Vietnam, we found that this principle is applying partially. In Bangladesh, it is also partially, because there should be an election process so that the community, they can select their leadership by themselves, like a general election. But in Bangladesh, in some cases, it is not clearly specified. Autonomy and independent principles, no. None of these principles is presently applying in Cambodia and Vietnam. In case of Bangladesh, it is partially, we can see that. Education, training, and cooperation among cooperatives principle. In Cambodia, we can see that it is there. In Vietnam, it is also there. In Bangladesh, it is partially there, because we found that there is a less cooperation among the cooperatives in the region and outside of the region. So now come to the sustainability aspect. Community-based fisheries management, they can contribute several United Nations sustainable goals, like number one, no poverty, zero hunger, good health, and life below the water. So it can significantly eradicate poverty. It can provide food security. It can protect aquatic resources and their ecosystem. Community-based fisheries management can provide economic growth. It can reduce inequality and then gender equality. Of course, we mentioned that in community-based fisheries management, 60% participants are women. And that is applicable, and that has been seen in Vietnam, Cambodia, in Bangladesh. A lot of women are involved, directly involved in the organization and in the management as well. So if you are involved in a community-based fisheries management, women are empowered, benefits can go equally to all the members, and it is a lower transaction cost because community-based fisheries management can buy their product at cheaper level, and they can sell their product directly to the supplier, so they can get rid of the middleman, so there is a less production cost. Strong position against third buyers, and possibility to include certification of origin and good sustainability of production, like global aquaculture certification, third-party certification. So if you can have a third-party certification, you can have a premium price on your product. So that can also ensure. And strengthening the institute, that is the goal number 17. So if they cooperate, they share their knowledge among the cooperatives, they can strengthen the institution. They can strengthen the local institution, regional institution, and also the global institution as well. What are the challenges in community-based fisheries management? The difficulties of implementing of co-management of a non-delimited resource system, such as marine fisheries resources. It is the problem in marine fisheries because the boundary, local boundary and regional boundary is to derive this boundary is very difficult. So it is a challenging to apply the CBFM in marine fisheries. Power relation, as I mentioned that even in our country, they have a different social class and they have a different level of power. And unfortunately, fishermen are the most disadvantaged group of the society. They are less educated, they are less skilled, so they have a low power to involve into the central governmental decision-making process and regional decision-making process. And local influential person, they handle this community-based fisheries management, and they use these fisheries and resources for their self, not for their members. So that is the problem. Weak coordination among different stakeholders, weak coordination among the institutional collaboration, non-recognition of organizational rights by external fishers, and then other actors to enforce the regulation. It is, we have also seen in Cambodia and Bangladesh, and even in some case of Vietnam as well, the non-member of the community, they can enter and they can catch fish at night at some point, and then the community people, though they wash their resources, but they cannot act as a policeman because they don't have a right to protect them to enter into their resources. Lack of a specific regulation, especially in case of Bangladesh, as I mentioned that. Many community-based fisheries organizations remain non-participatory organizations. So it is just a name, a paper tiger, but there is no real practice of 7 principles in community. So it is not giving any benefits to the members, and it cannot provide sustainable development. Conflict between fishery users or other community. There is still an overexploitation resource in community-based fisheries management as well. And this is due to lack of proper fisheries stock assessment, and then in implication or application of proper rules and regulation in practice. And due to this, there is an exploitation problem. Lack of training, so that some of the community-based fisheries organization could not develop the skill of their member, management skill of their member. That is also one of the problems. And of course, financial problem is a problem as well as always. How to overcome these challenges? You can see a nice photo from our last AWP where all of we are participating. Some social resources. Yes, I believe we all missing that events, right? Improve how to overcome the challenges, improve the definition of property right in different countries. We need to clearly define what is the property right, what is the right for the community people, what is the right of the member, and what is the right of the member so that the non-member cannot enter and extract their resources. In 3 countries, the 3 studied countries, we have seen this problem. So we need to further improve the definition of property right. Take advantages of traditional fisheries management. Of course, the local fishermen, they are managing their fisheries generation after generation. They have some indigenous knowledge, and we need to embed this indigenous knowledge to core principles of community-based fisheries management. And we need to blending this knowledge, then it can provide sustainable fisheries management, especially even in local scale. Enhance formal collaboration. We need to enhance collaboration between community-based organizations, and then the government official need to create a free communication and friendly communication channel so that they behave like a partnership, not a boss, not a big officials, that they will hinder the communication channel. So we need to create a good communication channel and communication platform. Establish a clear definition who are the members of the community-based fisheries management organization and what are their rights and obligations. Because if you are a member of the organization, you have a right. At the same time, you have to some obligation as well. Some of the community, they have a bylaws, but some of the communities, they are running in an informal way. That will not work because member has some obligation as well. Otherwise, they cannot be member, and then they might be excluded from the community organization. So how to overcome these challenges? Ensure democratic election process, especially in case of Bangladesh and Vietnam. Establish good monitor mechanism so that they can monitor their resources, and they have a decision-making process to avoid position of executive power. Provide technical support, improve control and surveillance of fisheries resources. Of course, there are a lot of stealing. There are a lot of problems because outsiders are catching their fish. So they need to have a strong monitoring system, and then government and NGOs can support that. Improve participation in commercialization activities, right? Marketing activities. Nowadays, they are just producing, but if they involve in a marketing activities, then the members of the community must be benefited more. Carry out other activities such as providing other goods, providing service as necessary. Maybe like as for example, let's say they can ecotourism based on the community. So that can give some extra activities that can provide some money to the community-based fisheries organizations. Established a small membership fees. In many countries, including our 3 countries, we found that many CBFM, they have not established a member fees. They are, because NGOs and government, they are pumping the money, but this is not sustainable. They have to introduce some member fees, and with these fees, they can set up their surveillance capacity and training capacity as well. The key driver of success of a CBFM, of course, they need to trust each other. There should be a transparency management system. There should be a flexibility, adaptive management. Political wish is important, as I mentioned. Encouragement. We need to encourage the local fishermen to develop their skill. We need to motivate them. We need to respect the local norms as well. As I mentioned, that most of the time we miss that point. We need integrity. We need to create right incentives for the members, so then member will be motivated and they will be involved in active management and team spirit. If we can ensure all of these factors, then that will help us to have a successful community-based fisheries management. And thank you for your attention, and thanks a lot. Stephen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. But first, thank you very much for this plenary session. Unfortunately, from my side, I miss few parts because of connection issues, but it's okay.
That's how it is, right? You know,
so,
if you do it online in different countries, that's the problem always. Yes.
Yeah, but you know, we have the record of the plenary session, and it seems that for the audience it was okay, so no problem. So I don't have a lot of questions, but I just want to share with all of you one thing. We have conduct systematic mapping of existing knowledge on the environmental inequalities in the Mekong River basin. This research project is finished, and we will share more about it tomorrow afternoon with my colleague Ling. But in link with what Dewan Ahsan explained this afternoon, one over many recommendation and conclusion of this systematic mapping, we learned that populations such as fisher are much less investigated in terms of academic research project. And we have to underline this point. I'm talking about the 5 Mekong countries, including Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Myanmar. And another point is, it seems that more capacity building is needed, especially for Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar on the topic of environmental inequalities, and maybe more regional perspective are lacking. So a more global approach is missing on environmental inequalities, including the topic developing by our colleague Dewan Ahsan this afternoon. It was only a few comments, but I'm sure that the audience are more questions about what you developed during 45 minutes, Dewan. So please.
Yes, you are welcome to do that.
Come on, is there any question or comment in link with this session? Please. You're welcome.
Okay. Good morning, Dewan, and also good afternoon, Stefan. I just want to ask Dewan about your very solid plenary sections about the community involvement on the fishery management in 3 Asian countries. But I would like to know from your point of view that among these 3 countries, all the community involvement is what are the difference between 3 communities from 3 countries involvement in the fishery management for sustainable on sustainability of the fisheries in these 3 countries. Thank you. How different?
Okay, how different, of course. It's a mixed result. In some cases, as I showed you in the slides, that they have some communalities as well. Of course, there is a difference, like in Bangladesh, as I said, that in some communities, they don't have any democratic process to elect their governing body. But in Cambodia, we found that it is practicing well, as for example. And in Vietnam, as it is a new cases, they only started is 2017. And I could not find a good colleague to work with me there so that we can have a concrete data. But from our initial result, it shows that there is still lacking of this democratic process, as for example. So difference are country-based, and inside the country, there are some difference into the regional level as well, and community-based fisheries management as well. Some of the community, they are managing very well because they have their skill, they have their knowledge, and they have their motivation, and they have a strong support from the local people as well, and local village shape. You know that these village shapes is very, very important because they have a control over the villagers and they help them. But in some cases, even in Cambodia, they have a conflicting situation because outsiders can come, they can extract their resources, though the community has the right to extract the resources. Even including the ban period when the community said that you are not allowed to catch your fish during this month, especially in a breeding season, they are coming. And then the community people, they cannot protect them because they don't have that right. So yes, there are some issues as well. Is this the answer of your question?
Yes, yes. And I want to know more about the willingness of the community to get involved for the co-management. Do you think there are all these three countries where the community have the willingness to get involved on the management practice?
Yes, and there have some effect, right? First of all, if you look in Bangladesh and Cambodia as well, who started this concept? It is the NGOs, international NGOs, right? They started this process. They motivate the villagers. And then one community has established that can show that this community-based fisheries management can get benefit to the fishermen and the farmers, then the other will be motivated. And in that way, in last 30 to 40 years, community-based fisheries management expand in many areas in Bangladesh, also in Vietnam. In general, I would like to say that, of course, local fishers, they have a real knowledge because they know that it is their resources. If the fish is gone, there is no fish, they will suffer because they cannot go for other type of job because they are fishing for generation after generation. So they are very, very cautious about the environmental pollution, about the climate change, and about the destruction of resources. So they are always willing to participate. But the issue is that they need external forces to mobilize them, like an NGOs, they can mobilize. Yes, in principle, in general, all of them are willing to participate.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
May I ask one question? Perhaps?
Yeah, please.
Can you comment on the situation in Tonle Sap, Cambodia? Is there a community-based fishery management in practice there?
We have a government official who has been participating in another project, Ms. Kim. So while we are interviewing, she is the higher governmental official. According to her statement, yes, there are some community-based fisheries management organizations is going well in Lesap region. But as I mentioned in my lecture, there are several challenges as there. Defining the regional boundary and then the access of the local fishermen and how to exclude the influential person and non-participatory members. These are the still challenges in Cambodia, in Lesap as well. There are some community-based fisheries management in Lesap, yes.
There was, at one time when I visited Tonle Sap and I heard about the concession being, there is concession system for fishing in Tonle Sap. It's still, in Tonle Sap, is still, the government is still control the property right of the fishery in Tonle Sap, or it's belong to the local people, the ownership.
Yeah. There's a conflicting situation as well still. Yes, that's right. And government is trying to solve this. But if you consider the LESAP as a whole catchment, LESAP cannot control by themselves. They need to cooperate in upstream, especially because nowadays there is a dam in Thailand, in Laos. So if you place this dam, you will not only, I think, create problem in water flow, but also the easy movement of migratory fish as well. In future, I think we can see that impact in LESAP as well. And LESAP is a very unique, and it provides a lot of resources, not only in Cambodia, also to the global fisheries as well. In our slide, we have seen that in Mekong, including LESAP, produce 15% global fisheries the captured fisheries. We need to be very careful about LESAP as well. Only Cambodia cannot handle it. They need a regional cooperation, of course, for sustainable development, real sustainable development of fisheries.
Thank you. Any question from our participant?
We have a question on the chat, Dewan.
What is the question? Can you read it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can read for you. If both government and local community have conflict at any of interest, is there any mechanism to settle it? Can local community leader hire from outside the community?
It depends on, yes, of course, we need to settle this. And this settlement can be done with a stakeholder involvement process, right? You need to recognize the stakeholders, like the different stakeholders. You need to sit together, and government can play the catalyst role here as well. Of course, there is a conflict between the local users, non-users, and governmental officials as well. But as I said, that the political will is important here. And I cannot discuss all the governmental challenges here as well, right? So, but you can understand that in a developing country like Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, we know that how our government runs, right? What are the real democratic process as well? It is not like Europe that we have a free voice and freedom and everything. So I don't want to talk too much. Then maybe next time I'll be problem to travel in these countries.
And the people who ask this question from Cambodia add, what is the concern and consequences of aquaculture practice to environment, for instance, water?
Instant water, that means the running water, if I understand correctly.
Well,
is it the?
Well, I didn't write this question, so I don't know what is it.
So if I understand it correctly, is the running water, like in a river. If the question is like that, then of course we have to be concerned about that, because there is a huge issues of problem of aquaculture, especially from pollution point of view. But nowadays there are some new technologies as well, which can use less water body and produce more aquatic product, or production of aquaculture is high. We can concentrate on that. But in general, I would rather say that in running water, we cannot use for aquaculture. No. There are several negative impact, environmental impact on stock, running water fishery stock or open water fishery stock. Any other question? I think it's better if someone can read it.
But you can read it. You can go to the chat tools, Dewan.
No, if we read it, then the other participant can know that what is the question, and then we can answer that. You know. Okay.
Okay. There's one more question here from Cambodia again. What is the best practice way forward to improve the sustainability of the community-based fishery value chain?
What is the Stefan, can you repeat it again, please?
The best practice.
What is the best practice to improve the
sustainability of the community-based fishery value chain?
Okay, it's a good question as well, because as I mentioned briefly, that community-based fisheries management still today, they're only focused on a production or managing the resources, but they seldom think about the marketing issues, right? So if the community can, so that's why they need special training. So if they can involve marketing directly to the main supplier, then they can bypass the middleman, because in whole supply chain, there are several middlemen and they consume a lot of profits. So if they can establish their own marketing channel, like in Europe, like in the Spanish case, the community fisheries, they produce or they catch their produce. At the same time, they sell their produce directly to the main supplier or their own channels, own shops. They can directly sell their product to the big restaurant as well. So that will be very helpful for the community people or for the members of the community-based fisheries management. Then they can have more benefits. And at the same time, if they organize this marketing channel together, they have a more power to negotiate with the buyer as well. Then they can produce in a bulk, they can increase the scale of production, and then they have a much more negotiating power. So in that way, they have to organize, they have to think about what are the main challenge. Maybe, as for example, in LESAP, they can directly communicate with the big restaurant or the big hotels in Phnom Penh, as for example, or the exporter who are exporting the product from Cambodia to Vietnam and China. So they need to establish their link. They need to think about that. That could be the best way to strengthen them.
Thank you, Dewan. We have one more question, and maybe the last one. Regarding community who rely on Mekong, do they have any impact caused by external factors or other countries? First question.
External factors within these 5 countries, of course, every time you read a newspaper, you can see that what is happening in your sea border, what is happening in a different countries level as well. I just briefly mentioned the dam over Laos, over Thailand, and that might affect in fisheries resources in Cambodia as well, because it is a huge problem for the migratory fish. And in LESAP, you can find that there are a lot of migratory species who migrate different political border as well. So there might be an effect, of course.
Okay. I think we will, if you don't mind, we will stop here to let Lionel Lemial, the last speaker of the day, Lionel Richefort, sorry, the last speaker of this afternoon. He needs maybe 1 hour or so with question and answer. Thanks to the participant to be reactive, and thanks again, Dewan, for your time and to share this topic, this crucial topic in the Mekong countries with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think the Lionel Richefort, so it's not Lionel Lemial, is with us. I saw.
Yes. Hello. Good morning. Hello.
Hello, Lionel. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Okay. We are okay. We are okay. So
yeah. Can you see me?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I can see you. The session are recording. So please, can you introduce yourself a little bit and share the PowerPoint with everybody, or you want us to do that?
No, I can try to share my screen. So let me do this. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay, so I can go on.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Stéphane. So thank you. I thank Stéphane and also Lionel Lemial for inviting me to present to this Asian water platform. So let me introduce quickly myself. So I am Lionel Richefort. I am from the University of Nantes. I am assistant professor in Nantes, in France. So I am basically an environmental economist, and I am going to present today a synthesis of works in the area of the economics of irrigation. In what I'm going to present, we focus on technological change in the irrigation sector, and with an interest about the adoption of new irrigation technologies. So I present this work. This work has been done a few years ago. I work on other topics like public economics also, and the economics of social networks also. So this is a synthesis of works that has been done a few years ago. And so I will present essentially the economic theory behind the subject. And yes, there is an application in what I'm going to present, but my focus is on theory, essentially. So the application, I will also present a little application. The application is not about an Asian area. It's in Réunion Island. So Réunion Island is a little French island in Indian Ocean, close to Mauritius Island. And the main crop in Réunion Island is sugarcane. So I'm going to present a synthesis of works on the adoption of new irrigation technologies for the irrigation of sugarcane. And so, as I said, I will mostly focus on methodology in this presentation, and also I will present some results about the application. But what I want to present is how economists basically model irrigation technology adoption in agriculture. So let me start with the menu of the presentation. So I will quickly introduce the subject, and then I will present the theoretical framework behind the adoption of new irrigation technologies by the agricultural sector. Then I will present the estimation strategy that we develop for the application in Réunion Island. Then some results, and then I will conclude quickly by some possible extension to these works. So the introduction. So the general motivation of this work was basically the fact that in Réunion Island, like in many areas in the world, there are many conflicts of use behind the use of water between agricultural water, domestic water, also industrial water, and also the need of the environment for water. So there are huge conflicts of use, and the policymaker in Réunion Island and also in many areas for the past years was to develop the supply of water. So they develop infrastructure for irrigation, and this had significant. This had many problems, like significant investment cost, also a problem of storage of water, and also this led to increased consumption of irrigation water because the supply of water was increasing, and also this led to increase physical scarcity of the resource. So, in recent years, policymakers have stopped to develop the supply of water, and they try to manage the demand of water. So this is what we are going to talk about, so how to supply the demand of water. And so there are many tools, many economic tools that could be implemented to supply to manage the demand of water. And one of which is interesting is the use of new irrigation technologies, water-saving irrigation technologies, which has been proposed as one of several possible solutions. There are also to increase the water pricing, and also in some areas they try to implement markets for water. So we are not going to talk about that. We are just going to talk about the adoption of new water-saving irrigation technologies, and with a focus here on the role of economic incentives in the adoption of water-saving technologies, and so in water saving. So the idea here is to test the efficiency of economic tools to save water. And we will focus here on subsidies for the adoption of new technology. So subsidies have a double objective in general. They try to provide incentive to adopt new irrigation technologies faster, and they try to increase the efficiency of water by farmers. And also, they try to sustain the viability of farms. So they have this double objective. So let me define the adoption. So what is technology adoption in the literature? So the pioneering works in this area, in this subject, was done by sociologists like, for instance, Everett Rogers in the 60s. And he defines the adoption process as a mental process, an individual path from first hearing about an innovation to final adoption. And he defines 5 types of adoption behavior, ranging from the early adopters, the innovators, and to the late adopters, and he called them the laggards. Okay, so there are 5 types of individual behavior defined regarding adoption. So a precise definition of adoption must distinguish between two main types of adoption, and this is what we are going to do here. We will distinguish between the aggregate adoption. So the aggregate adoption is indeed defined as the spread of a new technology within a region, so within a social group, within a population. So how the new technology diffuse within a given region. And we distinguish this aggregate adoption, this diffusion process, to the individual adoption, which is the adoption at the farm level. So the individual adoption asks about why an individual decide to adopt or not a new technology. So these are 2 different things, and this will imply 2 different theory behind this 2 definition of adoption. And in the case of irrigation technology, we will make an assumption here, because this is well fitted to the context of Réunion Island, which is that individual adoption will be seen as dichotomous. So the farmer will make the decision between just use a new technology or no use the new technology. we are not going to look at a percentage that farmers could adopt for the new technology on their surface, on their cropping surface. So the individual adoption is dichotomous, use or no use, while in the aggregate, the measure, the aggregate adoption, the diffusion will become continuous. We will look in the aggregate adoption to percentage of adoption within the region, within an irrigated perimeter, for instance, or within a country, or within a small region, or a social group. So let me talk quickly about aggregate adoption. So aggregate adoption models are generally dynamic. They are holistic model, and the idea is to derive analytically the behavior of the diffusion process over time. So we are not looking in the aggregate adoption to individual behavior. It's like we can make a parallel between the diffusion of a new technology within a region with the diffusion of an epidemic. Indeed, it's coming from the epidemiologic theory. It's adapted to the diffusion of new technology. So this is inspired by the frequent empirical findings of S-shaped, so sigmoid patterns of aggregate diffusion, and one of the most famous work was done about grillikies in the 50s for the United States for the adoption of new hybrid corn in the United States. So the main force driving adoption, driving diffusion in this kind of approach is imitation, is learning, endogenous learning, and also imitation. So the idea is that actually people, they imitate themselves, and so there are some innovators who will adopt early the innovation, and then other people, by word of mouth and by communication, they will then adopt the innovation, they will imitate the innovators. So the diffusion process here can be described by a compact mathematical formula, such as, for instance, a logistic curve which draw a symmetric sigmoid. But there are also other sigmoid curves that can be tested in this domain. So one important aspect is actually to use a mathematical formulation for the sigmoid, which is flexible enough to allow for asymmetry in behavior over time. So this is why the logistic curve is not may not be well fitted to draw the diffusion process, and maybe some other sigmoid curve may be better fitted. So in irrigation technology, there are some approach who develop this kind of model, and indeed the authors they try to integrate in the model some public incentive to manage the sigmoid actually, and they manage two parameters of the sigmoid, which is the speed of diffusion and also the sailing of diffusion. And in irrigation technology adoption, there are the economic tools that are integrated to this kind of model is a water price. So the idea is to look at, if we increase water price, will this increase the speed of diffusion? Will this increase the sailing of diffusion? There is also the crop yield price, which is integrated sometimes, and also the subsidy for irrigation equipment, which is integrated. So the idea is to look at the efficiency of this kind of economic tools to increase the speed and the sailing of the diffusion process. So let me talk now about individual adoption. So there have been critiques about the aggregate adoption model because we don't know why some farmers will adopt faster than others the new irrigation technology. There is no micro foundation to this kind of model. So this is why the individual adoption model have been developed based on the rational choice made by farmers. So the idea is that this kind of model relates the farmer choice to adopt or not the new irrigation technology to factors that may affect this decision. So there are many factors in the literature that has been shown, like for instance the surface of the exploitation, the age of the farmer, the wealth of the farmers, etc., etc. So a complete analytical framework in this for the individual adoption should ideally describe the time pattern of factors that may affect farmers' decision. But how you can understand, to obtain the time pattern for many observation is very difficult in agriculture. And so generally, we only have cross-section observation for farmers and also for the characteristics of farmers. And so one can only try to explain what at the time of the survey was conducted, the farmer chose to use the new technology or not. So indeed, there is a very general model that can be developed, theoretical model, but empirically, it's generally a reduced form of this kind of model that is estimated. So the common approach is to model the individual decision in a static framework and to use discrete choice models to explain adoption or non-adoption. So I will go back to this point later. And the idea of this kind of model is also to provide guidance to policymakers planning to use economic instruments in order to create incentive for adoption of water conservation technologies. So I talk about water conservation technologies. Indeed, it's more about, I should talk about improved irrigation technology, because water, the fact that a new technology imply water saving not only depend on the new technology, but also on the individual practice, the irrigation practice of farmers. And so adopting a new technology does not make always to save water. So in this work, there is an application to the sugarcane farming in Réunion Island, sugarcane farming, which is an administrative market in Réunion Island. So there is a guaranteed price to sell the sugarcane to the states. Our data allow us, so we conduct a survey. We talk about this later, and our data allow us to estimate both a model of aggregate adoption, so of diffusion, and the model of individual adoption. And so we have finally a panel series of 110 farmers with observation in ownerships of irrigation technologies. And what is interesting here is that we have this observation before and after a significant change in the equipment subsidy rates. So there have been a policy implemented in Réunion Island in 2000 that increased the subsidy rate of new irrigation technologies. So I will describe what kind of new irrigation technologies I'm talking about. But this increase is interesting, and then it can be tested. The impact of this increase can be tested empirically. So our analysis differ from traditional diffusion in that both we will specify the diffusion speed and sailing as a function of subsidy rate, and we will test the impact of the subsidy rate on the diffusion speed and the diffusion sailing of new irrigation technologies. And that is the individual level. I will show you a theoretical model that try to explain the timing of adoption for farmers. And so the result provide new insights. So the contribution here is we provide new insight regarding the role of equipment subsidies, also extension service. So there are a lot of extension service and communication efforts by institutions in Réunion Island about irrigation. So we can test also this policy about extension services and also about social networks. The idea here is to test whether the fact that a farmer belongs to a social group, like an association of irrigators, for instance, has an impact on his decision to adopt a new irrigation technology. So let me focus now on the theoretical framework. So this is an economic approach, and I will try to explain how economists model the adoption of new irrigation technology. So first, I talk about the theory of aggregate adoption, of diffusion. And so the main diffusion curve that has been used in the literature is the logistic diffusion curve with a constant pattern of diffusion. A constant pattern means constant speed of diffusion and also constant sailing of diffusion. And this is defined as a solution to a differential equation, which has the following form. So this is a very simple equation. So here on the left, we have the variation in adoption, in aggregate adoption between two dates, for instance, if we are in discrete time. And on the right, we have a function that draws a sigmoid. And this sigmoid will depend on the adoption at the preceding date. So the idea is that the adoption at time t depends on the adoption at time t-1. And also the sigmoid depends on two parameters. So beta here, which is the speed of diffusion, and n here, which is the sailing of diffusion. So we have this kind of sigmoid, which is used in the literature, and here you have the specification of the logistic diffusion curve, which is the main sigmoid that has been used in the literature. And Gridikis was the first to use this approach in the economic area. So there are alternative, of course, to the logistic diffusion curve. So the logistic diffusion curve has been criticized by the literature because it is perfectly symmetric. So the idea is that diffusion will be perfectly symmetric within a region with the same amount of early innovators and laggards, the same amount of early majority and late majority. So this has been criticized. There are asymmetries in the diffusion process, and so I will present here two alternatives to the logistic diffusion curve. So the first one is a Gompertz model. So this draws also a sigmoid, but a different sigmoid than the logistic curve. So here the sigmoid is asymmetric. The inflection point of the sigmoid is at 37% in the Gompertz model. And the idea here is that diffusion is slower at the start and end of the diffusion period. So there are less innovators and there are also less laggards in the diffusion process. So here is a specification of this kind of sigmoid. And the intuition behind this kind of sigmoid is that in equal small interval of time, the innovation lose equal proportions of its power of diffusion. So we will test also this model. And another classic extension is a BAS model, so which drew also another sigmoid. And the BAS model is interesting because it introduces another parameter here, which is a delta in the specification of the sigmoid, which enables to draw a distinction between innovative and imitative adopters. And the idea is that the probability of adoption at a given date also depends on this parameter. So you still have the speed of diffusion, the sailing of diffusion, but also this new parameter here, delta, which reflects a source of information external to the diffusion process, and which can be interpreted in the domain of irrigation to extension service, to the role of extension service and communication efforts about institution, local institution. So we will also estimate this model. So this is for the diffusion curve. So there are three main types of diffusion curve used in the economic literature to model the diffusion of a new irrigation technology. And the diffusion path, so let me talk about the diffusion path now. So how can we integrate economic instruments in this kind of model, which are very simple model with only 2 or 3 parameters, as I've said, so the speed of diffusion, the sailing of diffusion, and also the parameter delta for the base model, this new parameter. And also, the idea is that diffusion is spontaneous, actually. And the adoption at a date depends on the quantity of adoption at the previous dates. And so how can we integrate economic tools here? So the idea is to make actually the speed of diffusion endogenous and the sailing of diffusion also endogenous. And to specify the speed of diffusion as a function of, so here, a subsidy to equipment, to the adoption of new irrigation technology. So the speed of diffusion and also the sailing of diffusion will be now a function of the subsidy rates, of the subsidy rates. And so we will have new parameters to estimate in the model. So eta and gamma, which will denote the public subsidy impact on respectively diffusion speed. So here, so we will assess the impact of the subsidy rate and notably the change in subsidy rate on the speed of diffusion. And also the second parameter is gamma, which will reflect the impact of the subsidy rate and the change in subsidy rate on the sailing of diffusion. The sailing of diffusion, which is the total number, the total potential number of adopters in the end of the diffusion process. And we will make some intuitive assumption here that an increase in the subsidy rate will increase the speed of diffusion, and also an increase in the subsidy rate will increase the sailing of diffusion. So an increase in the subsidy rate will increase the total potential number of adopters in the end of the diffusion process. So this was for the diffusion approach, the aggregate adoption approach. So let me talk now about the individual adoption approach. So the individual adoption is at farm level. So this is here a microeconomic model that has been developed to assess the adoption, the decision of a farmer to adopt or not a new irrigation technology. So I will try to explain the behavior of the model. So I make the model the most simpler possible here. And the idea is that the model is solved backward and in 2 steps. So there is a first step where farmers will try to calculate their expected profit with each irrigation technology they can choose to adopt. So they can choose to keep their traditional irrigation technology. So they can choose to adopt a new irrigation technology. And we assume here that farmers are able to calculate the expected profit with a given irrigation technology. And then once this first step is done by farmers. So they calculate this expected profit with each irrigation technology. They will compare this profit, and they will choose the irrigation technology that will lead to the better profit for the farm. So precisely, we will assume that farmers use a vector of conventional inputs here. So let me note this vector x, bold x here to denote a vector, together with irrigation water, which is denoted xy, to produce a single output q through a production function that is f. Okay, so of course we could integrate the fact that farmers produce different crops. So here we assume that they produce only one crop, which is relevant to the context we are studying, which is Réunion Island, where farmers mainly crop sugarcane. So we denote by P the output price, which is given for farmers. So this is also relevant to Réunion Island because the price is administrated in Réunion Island, the price of sugarcane, and R, which is the vector of input prices. So the idea here is that water is essential for production. Without water, there is no production of the crop of sugarcane. So of course, in Réunion Island, areas on the island where there is no need of irrigation, sugarcane can grow without irrigation, only with the climatic conditions. But there are also some irrigated perimeters in which sugarcane cannot grow without irrigation. So we focus on the irrigated perimeters. So water is essential for production here. And we integrate the fact that water use may have different efficiencies. So the efficiency in water use, which depends on the utilized irrigation technology, is captured by incorporating a function. So this is a function H in the production function. So the idea here is that a farmer with a traditional, so first, there is a difference between the consumption of water by farmers and the final consumption of water by the crop. The crop will not consume all the water consumed by the farmer. There is some loss water, and this loss of water decrease with new irrigation technologies. And this is the idea of this function H here that is integrated in the production function. So the idea is that farmers are heterogeneous, and the irrigation water efficiency depends on farm management and other farm characteristics incorporated in this vector which is alpha. So the idea is that efficiency with a given technology can vary from farmers to another farmer because of their practice, because the adoption of a new irrigation technology involves a change in practice for farmers, and sometimes a big change in practice for farmers. And some farmers will not make the relevant change in practice, and this may have an impact on the efficiency of the use of water. So the profit function here is the following. So you've got the benefit, the net benefit, the benefit from cropping, minus the cost of water, and minus the cost of all other inputs. Okay, so here you can see that there is the production function. So depend on this product between the consumption of water XY by the farmer times the efficiency of the use of water in the farm, which depend on the irrigation technology that the farmer has on his surface, on his cropping surface. So in general, efficiency varies from 70% to 90%. This will depend on farm practice, but also on climatic conditions like wind, for instance, and other. Also, this will depend on the quality of soil. So basically, this will depend on the agronomic condition and also on farmer practice. So in Réunion Island, prices are fixed. Output and factor price variability is very low. So we will only test, we can only test the impact of the subsidy, the equipment subsidy on the adoption behavior. And also water price has a very low variation in Réunion Island. This is more social pricing than a price to regulate the water demand. This is more social pricing. So water price is very low in Réunion Island. So we will not integrate water price as a relevant economic tool to manage adoption and to manage water demand. So the only economic tool here is equipment subsidy. So the first step, the farmer problem is to maximize the profit or the utility of profit. So here you can see the problem of the farm, and the farmer will do this, can do this for each irrigation technology, even the irrigation technology that it doesn't have. Okay, so the idea is that farm can anticipate profit with each given technology. So when utility is linear, so the farmer only maximizes the profit with respect to the use of all inputs and especially water. So we focus here on water, so the optimal choice of water by the farm. And we obtain something very classical in microeconomics, which is that the farmer will consume water such that the quantity of water equalize the ratio of input price to output price. So the first ratio in the left here to the marginal product of the irrigation water input, which is here. So we've got an equality between the ratio of prices to the marginal productivity of water. And here we have a deterministic model. There is no uncertainty in the model, of course. So the farmer is able to anticipate perfectly the profit, but we can integrate in the model. So I don't do this here, but we can integrate in the model, of course, uncertainty on future profits, because, for instance, of uncertain climatic conditions. And so the model can be easily extended to a context with uncertain climatic conditions. So this has been done, for instance, by Koundouri et al. For irrigation in Crete, in Greece, in 2006. And the idea of this kind of extension is that farmers are risk averse, and so they are averse to risk on their profit because of uncertain climatic conditions, and more risk-averse farmers will consume more water. So this may be an explanation of overconsumption of water sometimes, and this could be because farmers are risk-averse. So consuming more water is like an insurance for farmers against production risk. So this is the first step. Farmers anticipate the profit with each given technology. They are able to do that, and if not, if they are in an uncertain context, they are able to calculate their expected profit. Okay, and then once this step is done, the farmer compare the expected profit or the utility of profit or the profit with each given technology, and he will adopt the new irrigation technology that make the better profit for the farm. So this is the second step here. So the decision is modeled as a discrete choice. So we will have three choices, three possible choices for the farmer. So the first one is no adoption. So the farmer will keep his traditional technology. So the first, there is another possibility for farms, that is to adopt an incremental innovation, that is to improve the traditional technology. And also there is another option for the farm, which is to adopt a radical new innovation, that is to change completely the irrigation technology on the field. So the idea is that innovative technologies increase water use efficiency. So the more modern irrigation technology have a better efficiency than the improved irrigation technology, which also have a better efficiency than the traditional technology. So the irrigation technologies in Réunion Island are drip irrigation a bit, but it is mainly a sprinkler irrigation. And the traditional irrigation technology in Réunion Island is we consider traditional the systems that are total cover system, sprinkler, and also mobile cover system. So, and the adoption, so an incremental innovation in the sprinkler irrigation is to adopt an integral cover system with for sprinkler irrigation. So we have here no adoption, so they conserve a total or mobile cover system. Adoption of an incremental innovation, adopt integral cover system, and adoption of a radical innovation, they adopt drip irrigation. So adoption imply a fixed cost also. So fixed costs are different between the different technologies. And adoption might also change the marginal cost of water sometimes. So not in Réunion Island, but generally, this may have an impact on the marginal cost of water, because sometimes the tarification for water is incremental. And adoption also change the optimal input choices, all other input used in the production function. So the farmer will adopt a new and more efficient irrigation technology if we have this condition. So first, he adopts a new, the more modern irrigation technology. If the utility with this more modern irrigation technology is better than the utility with the traditional irrigation technology, and also if the utility with the more modern irrigation technology is greater than the utility with the improved irrigation technology. So this is the same idea with the adoption of the improved irrigation technology. And if not, if these conditions are not satisfied, the farmer will decide to keep his traditional irrigation technology. So we finally integrate another aspect in the adoption, which is sunk cost. So the idea here is that farmers, when they adopt, there is some kind of irreversibility in the adoption process. That is, a farmer who adopts a new irrigation technology will have debts to pay the new irrigation technology. So he cannot choose to change his irrigation technology every year, for instance. He has to wait that the irrigation technology is fully paid to eventually change again of irrigation technology. So this is this irreversibility process in the adoption process. And so the idea is to integrate in the adoption condition the value of new information with regard to technology, so with regard to a given new technology, which is what is called an option value in the economic literature. So Dixit and Pindick, which are the pioneers in this area of option value. So this is for the theoretical framework. So now let me talk about the data and also the estimation strategy for our context. So the data we used in this study was collected via a survey on the structural characteristic of the irrigated sugarcane sector in Réunion Island. So we had actually a sampling frame made by the CIRAD in Réunion Island, which is a research cooperation center for agronomic research. And the sampling frame was constituted of about 50% of farmers and also 50% of the irrigated surface. So we don't have all farmers in the sampling frame. And basically, the sampling frame miss the poorest farmers who didn't want to talk to any institutions, local institutions. And we make double stratified sampling to extract a representative sample from this sampling frame. So here you have the two strata that we used to define our sampling. And we conduct semi-structure interview in farms. And so we were able to get the trajectory of irrigation equipment on the farm from the beginning of the farm, from the birth of each farm to the date of the survey. And also we collect individual characteristics of farm, of the exploitation, and also of the farmer. So we had many constraints like farmers, contact detail, the availability of farmers during sugarcane harvesting, the time of the survey, the language used in Réunion Island, because they use some kind of dialect sometimes, so it was quite difficult. So we get, what data do we get? So we get for the sprinkler with the integral cover system, we get over 16 years the proportion of new adopters. So we can draw the sigmoid with this kind of observation. And also we can calculate the cumulative proportion of new adopters at each date. And we have also the subsidy rate that was implemented for the adoption of integral cover system. And you can see the change in the subsidy rate in 2000, which was 30% of the cost of the new integral cover system to 65% of the cost of the new integral cover system. And also we get some individual characteristics. We got a lot of individual characteristics of irrigation users, but I present here only the characteristics that we used in the estimation. So there is a surface per worker. So the point here is that farms are small farms, family farms in Réunion Island, varying from 4 hectares to 8 hectares. So they are very small farms. So then we get also the intensification for the farm, from one low intensification of sugarcane growing to 3 very high intensification. So the diversification also on the farm, from 1 no diversification to 3 diversification of the farm. And also we have the water need for each farm, which is an agronomic variable here. So which is calculated by agronomic. This is a model of hydric balance, which calculates this water need by taking into account the climatic condition on the irrigated perimeter and also the soil condition. And we have also this observation about another activity for farmers from 0 no other activity. So the farmer only is only a farmer. To 1, the farmer has also another activity. And also we have the observation if farmers belong to social networks and to social groups like association of irrigators. So from zero, no membership, to one membership in at least one social group for the farmer. So the estimation strategy, so we go quickly here. So we estimate the simple logistic model with a constant diffusion speed and sailing first. So we conduct ordinary least square very simply in the R software here. And then we estimate 12 other models, the logistics, the BAS, and the Gompertz model, by considering the potential effects of an increase in the equipment subsidy rate. So we specified here the speed and the sailing of diffusion as linear function of subsidy rate. So we conduct here non-linear least square, and so 12 models. So 12 models, wow. Why? Because first we estimate the logistic model with constant diffusion pattern. Then we estimate the logistic model with the speed, with endogenous speed and constant sailing. Then the logistic model with endogenous speed, constant speed and endogenous sailing. And then the logistic model with endogenous sailing and endogenous speed. And we conduct this for the logistic, the BAS, and the Gompertz model. And at the individual level, we conduct logit model. So this is basically a multinomial logit model. So the idea here is to calculate probabilities of adoption. So we have three modalities. So the farmer either keep his traditional irrigation technology, or he adopt an improved irrigation technology, or he adopt drip irrigation, a new modern irrigation technology. And we calculate probabilities for these three states. And then the model will select the highest probability, and this will be our estimation. Okay, so here is the model, and we perform a Newton iterative process for this kind of model in the R software again. So let me show the result. So first, we estimate the logistic model with a constant diffusion pattern. So the first observation here is the R squared, which is very high. So the model has a very good performance here. But there are some autocorrelation in the error terms. So we also estimate an autoregression process of order 1. Okay, and this does not change basically the estimation. So we can look at the estimation for the speed of diffusion, which is equal to 0.25, and which is relevant with what we can observe in the literature. Okay, and also the sailing of diffusion, which has been estimated at 83%. So the result here say that in the end, 83% of farmers should adopt the new sprinkler integral cover system. And so we can projection of future adoption. So this kind of model can lead to projections, and we obtain that the sailing, so that is 99% of the 83% of the potential adopters will be attained in 2018. Okay, so here you can see the draw of first the diffusion of the sprinkler integral cover system in blue. Okay, so this is aggregate adoption, of course. So you can see the sigmoid, yeah, with an inflection point somewhere here. Okay, and in green we have the estimation. So the estimation is relatively good. but the problem with this kind of estimation is that we do not estimate fluctuation between two dates. Here you can see some fluctuation, okay? And this kind of model only estimates a sigmoid, a perfect sigmoid, even if the sigmoid is not symmetric. This is a perfect sigmoid with no fluctuations. So this is what we done with the logistics, the Gompert, and the BAS model. We estimate actually aggregate adoption in each time interval. Okay, so we try to estimate the fluctuation. So by doing this, we lose a lot of the efficiency of the estimation. Here you can see here with the R squared, and we estimate 12 models, and the best model was the Gompert's model, which show 45% of for the R squared. So this was the best model, and also the BAS model, which was quite efficient, but there is no significance for the estimation of the new parameter in the BAS model, the delta here, which may reflect extension service, the role of extension service on diffusion. So the result here are quite relevant with the literature for this parameter, but they are not significant. While we got some significances for the speed of diffusion and also for the impact of the subsidy on the speed of diffusion, and also for the impact of the subsidy on the sailing of diffusion. We've got here some evidence of the impact of the change in subsidy rates. So here you can see the fluctuation of the sigmoid. So there is no more sigmoid because we are here in each time interval. Okay, so in green we have the previous estimation, the logistic curve with a constant diffusion pattern, and in red you have the better model, and here you can see the increase in adoption just after the increase in the subsidy rates. And actually the Gompert's model with endogenous diffusion pattern is not too bad in estimating this increase in the adoption. Okay, so now at the individual level. So at the individual level, we test the effect of the different variables that I introduced earlier. So surface per worker, water need, intensification, diversification, other activity, and also social network. The fact that a farmer belongs to a social network. And we estimate the adoption of improved irrigation technology without automatism, without automatic irrigation, and also improved irrigation technology with automatic irrigation, like drip irrigation, which is an automatic irrigation, which can be programmed by the farmer. So we got also some evidence about these different variables here. So you can see that farmer who adopt improved irrigation technology with automatism. Higher surface per worker increase the probability of adoption of improved irrigation technology with automatism. So in this kind of model, we don't look at the number, we only look at the sign we obtain. So if there is a positive sign, this means that the variable has a positive impact on the probability of adoption of the endogenous variable here. And so another new insight here is the fact that farmers belonging to social groups will adopt faster the new irrigation technology with automatism. And so the model is quite efficient with almost 70% of correct predictions on the adoption decision by farmers. So then we can calculate elasticities, marginal effects, and also aggregate probabilities of adoption. And so I will not comment the number here. The idea of this calculation is then to draw, to identify thresholds for the different variables for the adoption of a new irrigation technology. Okay, so then we can draw 6 graphics and highlight thresholds for each variable on the decision adoption for farmers. So let me conclude quickly. So the diffusion of an incremental innovation spontaneously follow an S-curve, especially when this adoption imply only a small change in irrigation practice, which is the case for the adoption of the integral cover system for sprinkler irrigation. Second, an increase in the equipment subsidy rates inside faster adoption of the new water saving technology among farmers. And in particular, diffusion is affected by nonlinear change in farmer context of adoption. So this was a good point for the policy implemented by policymakers in Réunion Island. So at farm level, the adoption of a new irrigation technology is explained by the potential labor savings first of the adoption, and also by social networks. And the idea is that better informed farmers assign a lower value to the option of delaying adoption, and so they adopt new irrigation technology earlier. And this work, in general, defends the idea of differentiation of the diffusion process according to the complexity of the innovative equipment. So there are a lot of work to do to improve this work, of course. And the main challenge would be to try to implement micro foundation to a diffusion, to a dynamic diffusion process. So that is to try to rebuild the sigmoid with a microeconomic foundation, rational choice behavior by farmers. So that's it for me. I finish on this.
Okay, thank you, Lionel, for this presentation. This presentation, for me at least, was a little far away from my field of competencies.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But you know, we need to have a large topic about water and natural resources, and in the field of environmental and economy, there's a lot of things to learn also. Just maybe, I don't know if there's any question and comment from the audience, but I was wondering if this kind of model is more adapted for a commercial crop only, right?
Yeah, what do you mean by a commercial crop?
I mean that it's only for a farmer who will sell 100% of the record. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. In Réunion Island, farmer who grow sugarcane, they sell all the sugarcane.
So we are talking about only one crop and mono activities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is for the ease of the presentation, because we can extend this kind of model to many crops, for instance, or we can also extend this kind of model to only a fraction of the field for the adoption of a new technology. So not a dichotomous choice, but continuous choice. So this model can be extended in many ways, actually.
Do you know if this model was duplicated in other country or area in South America or Southeast Asia?
In Asia, I don't know, but I am aware of studies in South Africa. I am also aware of studies in the south of France, and I am also aware of studies in Spain. I am also aware of studies, so there are many studies in Australia also, in California for sure. So in many areas, yeah. In Israel also, yeah.
If I can say, in a developing country with a much more advanced economy, or
yeah, Réunion Island is more or less in a developing process actually. Yeah.
Si tu permets, Stéphane, j'ai quelques questions.
Yeah,
Je peux
Michael,
le
yeah,
lire.
I was reading your chat. Hi, how are
So
you?
I did not finish at all, so I'll talk about it. I feel it's a good economic approach, but I am just more or less devoted to agronomy, so I don't have several clear at all. So how do you relate it to environmental and economic approaches? So you are dealing with a monoculture in the and what is related to the production of basic food, because the monocultures tend to delete vegetables, for example, and you need to import it. Did you take it into account? A second question is, what is the impact, positive or negative, of that change of irrigation, let's say in groundwater or oils and the like? Because I didn't see any way to modify it. Of course, sprinkler irrigation, or I don't know if you we're talking about the sprinkler, is not the best way to save water, because there is a lot of evaporation when irrigating. So soil surface or the like are more efficient in that way. So I think it's not so clear. And do you introduce such type of variables, environment and the like, in the model? I listened that you applied this model to the reality, or is applied in several parts of the world. But in my opinion, efficiency is not a synonym of modern, especially because some old technologies like full cover irrigation were dealing better with soil salinity, which I don't know if is a problem in the Union or not. And the last one, I'm sorry, what is the relation with other uses of water? More or less reward.
Sorry.
What
Say again,
is
please.
the relation with the other uses of water? More or less rewarding, for example, a potable supply. And that's all. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Thank you very much. So I will try to answer, or maybe to provide some intuition for the answer. So so this is an economic approach. So this is not an agronomic approach, but what I can say here about sprinkler, for instance. So sprinkler in Réunion Island is a traditional irrigation system. Basically, almost all farmers, they grow sugarcane with a sprinkler irrigation. Because they are on very small farm, and because they know how to manage sprinkler, and they try to, for instance, to introduce drip irrigation for sugarcane, and what we observed is that so some farmers, the youngest farmers, try drip irrigation. And then they abandon, they let drip irrigation to go back to sprinkler irrigation because drip irrigation was not well fitted to sugarcane and to the soil in Réunion Island. So they tried drip irrigation, but they let drip irrigation away and they go back to sprinkler irrigation. So of course, here I am not talking about water saving. I am just talking about the adoption of a new technology, and the fact that the adoption of a new technology imply water saving is not discussed here, but this depends essentially on the change of practice by farmer. So a farmer with a mobile or total cover system would change for an integral cover system. He has to change his way of conducting irrigation, especially when he adopts also automatism. And he has to reduce the water rotation on the field. And some farmers, because they have belief, historical belief, they adopt the new technology and they did not change their practice. So the adoption of new irrigation technology does not necessarily involve water saving. And about salinity, I don't know much actually. I can't say I don't know. I just can say that, yeah, sprinkler is a traditional historical irrigation system, and that farmers they want to keep this traditional system, and they have some belief, and so there is a great effort from local institutions that must be done with the adoption of new irrigation technology by farmers, and this is not always done. So I don't know if I don't remember the first question. I don't know if I answer the question, but maybe you can say your question again if you want.
Which is the impact of this monoculture in the production of basic food, which is one of the main problems. For example, in Argentina, they just produce colza and they forgot the alimentary food.
Yeah. So so there are a lot of so sugarcane is a historic crop in Réunion Island, but it is decreasing actually, and we observe more diversification from farmers. So they grow. Actually, the irrigated perimeter in Réunion Island are small compared to the island, and in the island you can grow basically every type of crop you want to basic food, and there is also some I don't remember the word. Some élevage. I don't remember the word. So they diversify for co-growing. I don't know if you see what I mean. But and what we have also as an observation is that the agriculture is decreasing in Réunion Island. The agricultural surface is decreasing, and the total cut of sugar is no more approached by the production, so it is decreasing actually. So what is the impact of the monoculture on basic food? I cannot talk much about this, but yeah, so agriculture is decreasing. There is a lot of diversification, and sugarcane is decreasing a lot. But sugarcane is kept by farmers because it's like a rent, you know.
Lionel, we have a question from Cambodia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
please.
I just sent it to you. Would you please read it out loud so that everybody can hear?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. I already sent it to you. So yeah, okay, I'll read it
Oh
out
yeah,
loud.
yeah. Let me read. So adoption of new technologies to
Can
save
you
water.
please read it out loud for everybody to hear? So the question is, one is adoption of new technology is to save water. I think it can be more use of water. The second is, could you please explain the roles of economic incentives in water saving from your result?
Yeah. So as I said, here I just explained the role of economic incentive on the adoption process. And the fact that the adoption of a new irrigation technology imply water saving depends on the capacity of farmers to change their practice, their irrigation practice. And this is not developed here in my presentation. So I just present the impact of subsidies on the adoption, but not on water saving. So there are a lot of works in the literature about the role of water pricing on water demand, and if we can manage water demand with the water pricing. I didn't do that because in Réunion Island, the water price is very low. This is a social pricing. So the idea is to, by making farmer adopting new technologies, is to help them to become more efficient in their use of water. So basically, to grow the same quantity of sugarcane, they will use less water than before. So this needs a change in practice. A change in practice that can be, for instance, conducted by extension services, but this is hard work because farmers, they have belief, traditional belief, and so the adoption of new irrigation technology in Réunion Island does not always involve a reduction in the consumption of water because of these effects. So there is another question. So you have mentioned 5 types of adoption in your first introduction. Your respondent in
yes,
which?
the question is.
Oh yeah.
I say it out loud so everybody can hear it first. You have mentioned 5 types of adoption in your first introduction.
Yeah.
Your respondent in which type of adoption?
Yeah. So actually I mentioned 5 types of adopting behavior. So the idea is to decompose the sigmoid in 5 types. So there is the first part of the sigmoid when the adoption is very low, is just starting, where the adopters are called innovators, early innovators. Okay, so then you how can I say, you make 5 parts in the sigmoid, and the second part are the innovator. Then you have the early majority, then the late majority, and then the laggards, the very late adopters. And the idea by sociologists is that each type of adopting behavior involve a different thinking about adoption. Okay, that's it. I just mentioned these different types, but so to find again this type of behavior, I would need a panel data that I don't have. I only have a cross-section data, so I cannot say this is an early innovator, this is at a farm level. You see, I only have a cross-section. I don't know. Did you hear me?
Yes, so participant confirm something is the answer is okay, or would you like to ask to clarify or get the question?
Yeah. You want to clarify the question?
No, I'm talking about the one who asked the question.
No, it's okay. No, it seems there's
Oh yeah, okay.
It's okay.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay.
Question on the chat tools, Lionel.
Oh yes, okay.
And maybe because it's a little late here in Asia, we will close this session. I would like to thank you again, Lionel, for all the work you did to make this session comprehensive for everybody. Thank you to Michael too, because I didn't talk to him since a while, and I will be very happy to talk in private later. Not today, but soon. I would like to thank Chiang Mai again and Mr. Cheyenne to stay with us until the end. And we will start tomorrow morning at 9:30, and we will come back for 2 plenary sessions in the Mekong Delta. I hope to everybody a nice dinner and nice sleep too. So talk to you tomorrow and take care of yourself. Thanks, Lionel, Michael, everybody.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Hello, Deepan.
Who's talking? Okay, see you on tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
เราจะ wrap up ได้ไหมหรือว่าแต่ว่าคงไม่นานนะเพราะว่าทุกคนเหนื่อยหมดแล้ว Sorry, I think we should spend some time, maybe wrap up. Should not take a long time because you have spent the whole day with us here. So just reflect upon what we have learned or not learned today. Jan, do you have something to make comments? How about Michael? Any?
Okay, I think that's it. So is it okay to leave, or Chiang Mai, would you like to say something? Okay. Bye, everyone.